We were the kind of fools who chased shadows for fun. Me, Jake, and our ragtag crew of urban explorers, always hunting that electric buzz of the unknown in the city's forgotten corners. I'd stumbled into this hobby after a string of dead-end jobs, craving something that made my pulse thrum like the old carnival rides from my boyhood summers. Peter, our self-appointed leader with his wild eyes and endless ghost stories, had heard rumors about this place, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, squatting like a hulking beast in the weeds, said to hide treasures buried by some long-gone eccentric, a mad scientist type, they claimed, who'd tinkered with things best left alone. Gold, artifacts, forbidden knowledge. Who knew? It was the thrill that hooked us, the promise of peeling back the skin of the ordinary to glimpse whatever lurked beneath. The night we went, the air hung thick with autumn chill, leaves rustling secrets as we pried open the rusted doors. Flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing heaps of dusty crates and tangled machinery, like the bones of some mechanical giant. "Jackpot," Peter said, grinning, his voice bouncing too loudly in the vast space. We laughed, shoving each other playfully, oblivious to how the shadows leaned in closer, listening. Deeper in, we found it. An archway leading to a makeshift maze of stacked debris, its walls cobbled from old wood and metal scraps. The air grew heavier there, carrying a faint taste of metal that twisted in my gut. But we pressed on, drawn by the lure of what might wait at the center. Then, as I stepped through the maze's first twist, a soft rustle sounded from the walls, like fingers brushing against skin, and something warm grazed my ankle. I jerked back, heart slamming like a carnival mallet against a high striker. My flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, trembling in my grip as if sensing the place's wrongness. The air hung stale, heavy with decades of dust. For a split second, I swore I saw it, a pale, elongated shape slithering beyond the light's edge. But when I swung the beam down, nothing. Just shadows coiling like smoke from a dying fire across the cracked concrete floor. The abandoned warehouse loomed around us, a vast relic of a shuttered industrial era, now a makeshift maze for urban explorers like us. We'd heard the rumors, treasures hidden by a reclusive inventor, a mad scientist who vanished years ago, leaving tales of experiments gone awry. Gold, artifacts, whatever it was, it drew us here. 3 fools chasing adrenaline and fortune under cover of night. "What the hell was that?" I muttered, my voice bouncing faintly off the makeshift walls of stacked crates and rusted metal girders. My skin prickled with gooseflesh, not from cold, but from that primal instinct screaming I wasn't alone. Peter, ever the skeptic, laughed it off, his chuckle forced and too loud in the oppressive quiet. He clapped my shoulder hard enough to jolt me, his hand lingering a moment too long, as if he needed the contact to steady himself. "Jumpy already, huh? Come on, treasures wait." His eyes gleamed with that manic excitement he always got on these excursions, masking his own creeping doubts. Peter was the ringleader, the one who dragged Jake and me into this. We'd been friends since college, bonded over late-night tales of haunted places and lost fortunes. But lately, his obsessions had taken a darker turn. Jake, quieter and more cautious, hung back, his flashlight sweeping methodically, illuminating faded graffiti on the walls, symbols that looked less like street art and more like frantic warnings scratched by desperate hands. We pushed deeper into the maze, its walls pressing closer, a labyrinth of splintered crates and rusted girders that shifted in the flickering beams, as if the structure itself breathed, along with Straubian hints of forgotten sins. The uneven floor, littered with debris, crunched underfoot. Broken glass like brittle bones, tangled wires snagging our boots like grasping roots. Every step resounded strangely, muffled, yet amplified, as if the maze listened, absorbing our sounds and twisting them into mockery. The air grew heavier, laden with a musty odor of old attics and forgotten cellars where secrets festered in the dark. I felt the building's weight pressing down, its history seeping into my pores. Legends spoke of Dr. Marshall Crowe, the scientist who'd owned this place, a brilliant mind unhinged by loss, his family taken in a tragic accident, or so the stories went. He'd delved into forbidden sciences, blending biology and machinery in defiance of nature, creating abominations in pursuit of immortality or resurrection. We'd laughed it off as campfire tales, but now, with shadows dancing just out of reach, doubt gnawed at me. As we navigated the twisting paths, the metallic tang in the air sharpened to a coppery scent, like blood congealing on a slaughterhouse floor. It coated my tongue and churned my stomach. Peter led the way, his bravado a thin shield against the growing unease. "This place is a gold mine," he said, his voice returning distorted, as if the walls were warping his words. "Crow's lab notes alone could be worth a fortune. Imagine what he hid here." Jake nodded absently, but I caught the flicker of fear in his eyes when our beams crossed. He was the pragmatic one, who'd mapped our route on a crumpled blueprint found online. But even he seemed off-kilter, his steps hesitant. We rounded a corner, where crates towered higher, forming narrow corridors that forced us single file. The flashlight beams played tricks, casting elongated shadows that mimed our movements like silent companions mocking our intrusion. Jake vanished around a corner, his whoop of mock excitement returning distorted, a hollow sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Hey, check this out," he'd called, his voice bright with forced enthusiasm. Then silence, abrupt and total, as if the maze had swallowed him whole. We called out, our voices bouncing off the walls, but the responses came faint and mocking, twisted into something almost like laughter. Peter cursed under his breath, shining his light ahead, but the path forked unexpectedly, a deviation from the map Jake had insisted was accurate. My pulse quickened, a drumbeat in my ears that drowned out the distant hum of the city outside. This wasn't right. The warehouse was old, but not this labyrinthine. Had we taken a wrong turn? Or was something guiding us? I turned a bend and froze. The path behind us had changed. What was once a clear gap between crates now bulged with odd protrusions, pale, veined shapes twitching like fingers, grasping for purchase on the edge of reality. They weren't wood or metal. They looked organic, like exposed roots or veins pulsing beneath translucent skin. My mind reeled, trying to rationalize it. Maybe mold or fungus overgrown in the damp. But deep down, I knew better. The air hummed with a low vibration, like the thrum of a hidden heartbeat. "Guys?" My voice cracked, high and thin, betraying the terror bubbling up inside me. Peter was ahead, calling for Jake, but I couldn't move. Something clutched my calf, warm and insistent, not metal or wood, but soft, pulsing flesh that recoiled when I kicked free, leaving a sticky residue on my jeans that burned like acid. I yelped, stumbling back, my flashlight clattering to the ground. The beam spun wildly, illuminating glimpses of the thing, a tendril, pale and mottled, retreating into a crack in the floor like a living vine. It had felt alive, deliberate, as if testing me, tasting my fear. Panic clawed at my throat like a wild animal scrambling for escape. My breath came in ragged gasps, the coppery scent overpowering, mingling with something sweeter, like rot and regret. Peter whirled around at my cry, his face pale in the erratic light. "What happened? Are you okay?" His eyes widened as he spotted the mark on the floor, the faint glistening trail where the tendril had vanished. We didn't wait for answers. We bolted forward, shouting Jake's name, our voices a cacophony swallowed by the maze. The walls closed in tighter, girders groaning under strain, and I swear I heard murmurs, sibilant sounds slithering from the shadows, too low to discern, but insistent, like secrets shared just out of earshot. We found Jake, isolated in a dead-end chamber, clawing at walls that writhed with interlocking limbs, human arms and legs fused in a grotesque tapestry, eyes blinking from knotted joints, mouths gaping in silent screams. The space was no bigger than a prison cell, illuminated by our frantic beams that cast nightmarish shadows across the horror. Jake knelt with bloody nails from scratching the mass, his face a mask of terror. "It won't let me out," he whimpered, voice breaking. "It's moving. Oh God, it's alive." The walls pulsed like a breathing organism, arms protruding at odd angles, fingers flexing weakly. Some ending in stumps merged seamlessly into torsos or thighs. Dozens of eyes stared from the joints, pupils dilated in perpetual agony, tracking our movements with eerie precision. Mouths opened and closed soundlessly, lips cracked and bloodied, as if trying to form words. The air hung thick with the stench of decay and amplified sweat and fear. Murmurs slithered from them, ethereal pleas. "Join us. End the pain." The voices overlapped, a chorus of despair resounding in my skull, pulling at the edges of my sanity. They emanated not from one source, but from the walls themselves, harmonizing in a symphony of suffering. I backed away, bile rising in my throat. But the entrance we'd come through was sealing, tendrils of flesh weaving together like knitting skin. This was no illusion. It was real, tangible horror. Memories of the legends flooded back, Dr. Crow, driven mad by grief, had experimented on vagrants, on the lost souls of the city, fusing them with his machines in a bid to conquer death. But something had gone wrong. The subjects hadn't died. They'd merged, becoming this sentient entity, a living maze that fed on intruders, reshaping itself with each new victim, a horror born of that mad scientist's legacy, thriving on fear to trap and torment. The murmurs grew louder, insistent. Become one. Release us. The others scattered as the structure erupted. A low rumble shook the chamber, and the walls burst outward in a frenzy of motion. Fleshy vines lashed from the floor like whips, while fused limbs detached and reformed into hulking predators, amalgamations of torsos and tendrils that lurched forward, grasping with malformed hands. One abomination towered over us, a conglomerate of twisted bodies with faces embedded in its chest, moaning in unison. Peter screamed as vines latched onto him, wrapping his legs and pulling him into the mass. "No! Get it off!" he howled, thrashing wildly. But the tendrils burrowed into his skin, veins pulsing as they integrated him. His body twisted, bones cracking audibly as he was assimilated, his screams morphing into ethereal murmurs. I watched in horror as his face contorted, eyes bulging before sinking into the writhing wall, becoming just another blinking orb in the tapestry. I ran, my breath ragged, through the endless labyrinth, defenses activating with every desperate turn. Tendrils snaking from the floor, walls bleeding warm ichor that burned like regret on my skin. The maze shifted around me, paths opening and closing like a living puzzle, hurting me deeper. Behind me, Jake's cries grew fainter as he was dragged down, his pleas merging with the murmurs. "Help me. Join us." The air thrummed with movement, shadows lunging like predators, and every corner concealed new terrors, eyes peering from the cracks, fingers brushing my ankles, voices murmuring my name in tones that mimicked my dead mother's. My mind fractured under the assault, unbidden memories surfacing, child nightmares of being buried alive, the suffocating darkness that had haunted me since my parents' accident. Was this what Crow had intended? A prison of eternal torment, where fear was the currency and assimilation the only escape. Jake was next, his final scream resounding through the corridors as the maze claimed him. I glimpsed it, a mass of limbs engulfing him, pulling him under the floor like quicksand made of flesh. His hand reached out one last time, fingers splayed in desperation, before vanishing into the pulsating ground. Alone now, I realized the grim truth. Escape meant surrender, becoming part of its ever-hungry form, or eternal pursuit in this nightmarish eternity. The murmurs were constant now, a lullaby of madness promising peace and unity, an end to isolation. My legs burned with exhaustion, every muscle screaming for respite, but stopping meant death, or worse. I stumbled through narrowing passages, the walls grazing my shoulders and leaving trails of sticky residue that tingled and numbed. The coppery scent was everywhere, mingled with the acrid burn of my own sweat and fear. Battered, limbs heavy with exhaustion, I stumbled into the maze's pulsing core, throbbing like a diseased heart. It was a vast chamber, larger than any before, its domed walls a cathedral of fused humanity, thousands of interwoven bodies pulsating as one with a collective heartbeat. At the center, a grotesque nucleus throbbed, veins radiating like roots to feed the structure. Eyes blanketed every surface, staring with accusatory gaze, while mouths chanted in unison, "Join us in the pain." Tendrils reached for me, slow and seductive, promising oblivion in their embrace. I collapsed to my knees, the flashlight slipping from my fingers, its beam illuminating the horror in stark relief. The air vibrated with the core's rhythm, sinking to my faltering pulse. Resistance ebbed as murmurs filled my mind, eroding my will. Perhaps surrender was mercy, a way to end the endless chase. As tendrils brushed my skin, warm and inviting, I felt the pull, the maze's insatiable, ancient hunger drawing me in. But no, a spark of defiance flared, born from terror's depths. I scrambled back, grabbing the flashlight, its light a feeble weapon against the encroaching darkness. The core reacted, its tendrils whipping faster, the murmurs turning to shrieks. I turned and fled once more, but the paths were sealing, the maze contracting like a closing fist. Every turn led back toward the heart, the entity toying with me, savoring my fear like fine wine. I thought of Peter and Jake, their essences now part of this abomination, their voices among the chorus urging me to yield. The ichor from the walls soaked into my clothes, burning paths across my skin, leaving welts that pulsed in time with the core. My vision blurred as exhaustion erased the line between reality and hallucination, faces in the walls morphing into those of loved ones, pleading for me to stay. Hours blurred into an eternity of pursuit. Or was it minutes? Time lost all meaning in the maze's embrace. I hid in alcoves that proved temporary, the walls shifting to expose me. Once I found a rusted door, a possible exit, but as I pried it open, fleshy growths burst forth, blocking the way and lashing at my arms. Blood welled from the gashes, warm and sticky, and I tasted copper on my lips. My own essence now mingling with the mazes, the murmurs evolved from pleas to taunts, recounting my failures. The job I'd lost, the relationships I'd ruined, the isolation that drove me to these reckless adventures in the first place. "You belong here," they hissed. "With us." In a moment of clarity, I recalled a detail from the legends. Crow's notes, hidden in the core, offered a way to shut it down. Or was that just wishful thinking? Desperation drove me as I doubled back toward the heart, dodging tendrils that grew increasingly aggressive. One snaked around my ankle, yanking me off my feet. I kicked free, but not before it tore a chunk of fabric and flesh, sending a white-hot lance of pain up my leg. Limping now, I pressed on, the throbbing core drawing nearer, its sickly bioluminescent light guiding me like a siren's call. As I re-entered the chamber, the air grew thicker, the heartbeat deafening. The tendrils converged, but I spotted a pedestal at the nucleus's base, etched with symbols and holding a dusty ledger. Crow's journal. I lunged for it, tendrils grazing my back, tearing cloth and skin. In my trembling hands, the pages revealed diagrams of fusion and notes on neural integration. The entity sustains on fear, it read. To end it, deny the sustenance, embrace calm. Absurd in this maelstrom of horror, but I tried. Closing my eyes, I slowed my breathing, picturing peace, a childhood beach, waves lapping gently. The murmurs faltered. The tendrils hesitated. But calm was fleeting. Panic surged as a massive form detached from the wall, a guardian amalgam with the faces of Peter and Jake embedded in its chest, their mouths frozen in silent screams. It charged, limbs flailing wildly. I dodged, slamming the journal shut, but its grasp caught my arm, yanking me close. Its flesh merged with mine in a burning fusion, agony searing through my veins. I screamed and fought back, but the pool was inexorable. "Join us," Peter's voice resounded from the mass. In that moment I understood. There was no escape. The maze wasn't just a trap, it was a mirror of the soul's deepest fears, and I had walked right into it. Yet, as assimilation began, a final thought pierced the haze. Perhaps by becoming part of it, I could change it from within. Or maybe that was the entity's final deception. The tendrils enveloped me fully, the core's throb becoming my own, oblivion descending like a merciful shroud. As the tendrils wove into my flesh, pulling me into the core's throbbing embrace, I felt my bones soften like wax under a carnival flame, reshaping into something eternal and grotesque. The pain was exquisite, a symphony of agony that drowned out the murmurs, merging my screams with those of Peter and Jake, our voices now one in the chorus of the damned. My skin stretched and fused, limbs elongating into pale vines that intertwined with the maze's vast body, eyes sprouting from my joints to blink eternally at the shadows. Oblivion wasn't mercy, it was rebirth into endless hunger, my essence fueling the entity's insatiable pulse. I saw it then, in flashes of fractured memory. The thrill we chased at boyhood carnivals, where joy twisted into dread. The electric buzz of the unknown luring us like moths to this flame. But now, I was the shadow we fools had hunted, part of the beast squatting in the weeds. My transformed mouth gaping in silent invitation, the warehouse swelled larger, its walls breathing with renewed vigor, and from its depths, a siren rustle sounded, like fingers brushing warm against skin, calling to the next band of thrill-seekers, murmuring of buried treasures, drawing them into the maze's eternal midway of horror. And yet, in the depths of this grotesque unity, a spark of my old self flickered one last time, a defiant ember amid the devouring dark. I focused it, willing my consciousness to push against the entity's core, not to merge, but to shatter. The mass convulsed, tendrils recoiling as if burned, and for a heartbeat, I glimpsed freedom. The warehouse crumbling, the maze unraveling like rotting thread. But it was an illusion, the entity's cruelest jest. The cord tightened, extinguishing that spark forever, and I dissolved into the hole, my final scream resounding as laughter in the void. Years later, or perhaps moments, time means nothing here. I sense them approaching, fresh faces, eyes wide with reckless curiosity, drawn by the same murmurs that ensnared us. The maze rebuilds itself around my essence, walls pulsing with my stolen life, and as they step inside, I feel the hunger stir anew. There is no escape, no salvation from within, only the eternal cycle. Now I am the lure, the trap, the waiting horror. Welcome to the Midway Brothers. Join us.